Hello, world, and welcome to season 2, episode 21 of Pardon the Politics podcast. I am your co host, Jeezy, along with my brother and my partner in politics, Manny, my brother, on this fine day. How are you doing?
I'm ready for a nap.
Bruh.
Ready for a nap. If I
Hey,
could
bro.
just get me a quick 8-hour nap, I'd be good.
Bruh, I've
Uh,
never been big on naps, but I'm starting to
That's a
appreciate,
damn lie. That's a
bruh,
damn.
in my former life,
I-
before I was a family man, I thoroughly enjoyed naps. But as a family man now, married with multiple children, I feel like I can't really enjoy the nap the way that I want to because I'm like, while I'm napping, I could be doing something.
and you just got to be aware. There's no more carefree napping
No, 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 no. It's no more. It's no more of that, bro. But then that takes away the genuine essence
of a
of a
nap.
nap. So is it a nap or is it just uh uh a maintenance reset?
Maybe if that.
Because if I ever try to nap, my youngest is gonna come and say, "Daddy, can I do this? Daddy, can I have that?" So it's never really a true nap. It's just kind
Mhm.
of a remembrance of what used to be and what was. But I
I
need a nap as
digress.
well, brother. I feel you, but unfortunately, we have a duty amongst the people
The people
to
must.
provide them the content in which they seek from week to week. So shout out to our listeners.
Hey,
Welcome to season 2, episode 21. We're so honored to have you a part of this episode and that you're listening. As always, we ask you to like, share, and follow, and spread the news of the pod to your inner circles as we try to make sense of whatever is
attempt to
going
make
on.
sense.
Uh, we try to. I know that me and Manny have come accustomed to learning that the try is a failed attempt, but we try as best as we can. But sometimes society and our political landscape throws us a curveball that oftentimes is just one of those ones we just got to take a strike.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So, welcome to the episode. Thank you for listening and tuning in. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first topic, and our first topic of the day will be something that has been announced as being big and being beautiful, and that is going to be the first thing that we cover. Pause. So, political pause. So that is our big, beautiful bill that has been provided by the House and Donald Trump as he went on the Capitol Hill to get this thing pushed through.
Mr. President, can you give us an insight into what your big, beautiful bill aims to achieve?
First and foremost, it gives tax cuts to the most vulnerable and needy in our society,
Oh,
my
that's
billionaire
great.
buddies and me. Because, like they say, mo money, mo problems. And I don't want to put that kind of stress on ordinary Americans. You guys already have enough on your plate.
Thank you.
Eggs, fuel, rent, not knowing how you're going to feed your kids. So I, as your dear leader, will carry the burden of wealth
Bruh.
for you. It's just what I'm
Bruh.
willing to do for the people. Besides,
Thank you, Donald
with the
Trump.
kind of
No. So caring, so giving.
That's the type of leader we need, brother.
You're right.
So
Just
today we're going to dig into what lawmakers and President Donald Trump have been calling the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
And
Now
you know
that's a
what?
pretty name.
If I was LeVar Ball, I'd sue him.
Oh, bruh, BBB. Oh,
BBB,
bruh, yes,
yeah.
sir. No, I need to recoup that. I need that money off of that, bruh.
LeVar, if you listening, I need you to hop on the phone.
Yes, sir.
They trying to come after the BBB, man.
Yeah, don't let them do the
Don't let them
BBB
do
like that, bruh.
Mm-mm.
But with this Big Beautiful Bill Act, and while that is a pretty name, for the American people, what's actually behind it? This is one of the most, and all I can remember, one of the most sweeping pieces of legislation that has come through Congress in years, impacting your paycheck, health care, your child's future, and even how we fight climate control. So
It's
whether
it's 1,000 pages,
bruh,
over a
wow,
1,000 pages, and
yeah, no.
and I already know, ain't none of y'all
Ain't none of y'all read this.
read this.
All y'all that said yay ain't read these 1,000 pages. Ain't no way.
You mean to tell me Marjorie Taylor Greene sat down
No,
and read
no.
that?
She be wrong most of the time, so I know she ain't reading.
Big wrong.
So whether
Big
you're
wrong.
you're clocking in overtime or raising your children or eyeing retirement while inflation is breathing down all of our necks, this bill touches all of us. So I think that for the American people, we all need to have we should be invested in this bill and what's in it and how it touches all of us. So on this episode and in this segment, we're going to break that down as best as we can, plain and simple, with the pros and the cons and the questions that actually matter to middle age Americans and just the middle class Americans. As you can tell, I hope that you can tell from listening to our podcast that is a concern for both me and Manny of what this does to the American people, and we understand the position and the importance of our middle class Americans. So this isn't just some partisan spin. This is not something that we're going to do where we're going to take we're going to try to spin this on one side of the aisle or the other. We're going to be real in this segment and talk about the pros and the cons of this bill and how will it affect the largest class of our American society. So as we start into that, we're going to go first by breaking down this bill in the segment of tax cuts and expansions. So, in that tax cuts and expansions, the pros of that is that there will be an 815 average saving for middle income households. And I think this was Manny, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this was a campaign promise of Trump that there was
Oh
going
yeah.
to be a tax-free tips and overtime, which would give relief to workers in service and hourly roles. So, with those two pros that we're going to start
Man.
with, how do you believe they have an impact on the American class, the middle age, the middle class Americans?
So let's take a step back.
Okay.
I do enjoy me some tax cuts because
Oh.
nothing I hate more than sending Uncle Sam some money.
And he will get his money.
And he's going to get his money.
Shout out to Wesley Snipes.
Ron Isley. Bro.
Oh, bro, fat Ron went to prison for it. Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
You do not play with Uncle Sam.
Don't play. Look, there's one person who's going to get paid.
Bruh.
That's Uncle Sam.
And Uncle Sam.
Now, contextually, on average, for every dollar in tax cut, it yields somewhere between 50 cents to 90 cents into the GDP. So it does tax cuts generally produce economic activity. And the way our economy is looking, we could use a boost in economic activity outside of the Fed just printing money out of thin air and pumping it into the economy. All that being said, our debt is spiraling.
Yeah.
So there's going to be, and this is just setting the field. I have a general concern that currently we sit at $36 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
So to cut that 36 trillion, to even attempt to cut that, or even to not grow it, we have to be paying on that in excess. It's kind of economics 101. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned because, people like to get creative.
Mm-hmm.
So no tax on tips and overtime. So we know federally everyone's required to pay. It's like $2 and something cents an hour. Yeah. Everything else is on tips. I'm going to be very intrigued to see what employers do with this. Because it's going to be interesting, and it's definitely a wad of money that's getting ready to get cut out of the federal budget, essentially. And most tax bills in general, they're usually self-paying. So when they do this, they're like, hey, we're going to cut taxes here, but this is how we're going to regenerate the input. And what's missing out of this entire bill, from my standpoint, is I was expecting something to be in there about tariffs. I thought it was guaranteed that he was going to look to try to codify some or any of these tariffs. I didn't see any of that.
No.
So yeah. It'll be interesting. The thing that caught me is that you won't pay any taxes on that income into 2028. So this does seem like it's going to be, hey, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And then something happens in 2028, right?
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on it, but something happens. So I think that'll be interesting. But yeah, man.
Let me ask you this, because one of the pros is that there's a $815 average saving for middle income households.
Mm-hmm.
When you see that in this bill, is this truly a middle class bill? Just looking at this particular part of it, is this a middle class bill, or is this just another boost, as we've heard coined by Bernie Sanders, just another boost for the top 1%?
I mean, just from a raw standards, if you look at who pays taxes, most of and we're talking in raw dollars, upper class and middle class pay the bulk of the taxes. But when you look at percentages, that very top elite class pays nowhere close to the percentage of everybody else. But that's also because their incomes are usually diversified and it's not just purely off of income. But I think it's dangerous to just look at any type of bill in general, but especially one this large. At least you should not take it in the context of a tweet, meaning you can't just grab a single line and say, oh yeah, this thing is really good. Yeah, there are things on here that I actually think are very good. In a time where they're trying to spur more production of life here with more children, taking that tax credit and increasing it to 2,500, also to 2028. Really weird. This 2028 number keeps coming up. I think that helps, raising the standard deduction for seniors, allowing them to say, you see that. But if you look on the other side, you see that they're cutting, impacts to Medicaid, impacts to the environment. So it's really dangerous, I think, to only look at it line by line. I know we love consuming in 270 characters, but I think you have to look at this in complete totality of what's actually going on here.
Well, I think that when we look at this bill, which is a lot to digest, and when I think of it being just overall a lot to digest, I wonder.
We got 10 minutes into the episode, and we haven't done yet.
We're here with it. But I just wonder how much of this really is able to be digested and be approved so quickly that we understand the ramifications of what we're signing up for. And with it being going into 2028, what is the purpose of that? Where are we getting at with it going into an election?
We already know the campaign. He's setting up the campaign speeches like, hey, if you want me to extend these, y'all got to vote for me. To your question earlier about, is this something for the middle class? Let's take another line item from the economy. Let's look at it.
Okay.
You can deduct up to $10,000 in interest on car loans on U.S. made vehicles. And in my head, I'm like, okay, but let's think about it.
Mm-hmm.
How big of a loan do you need to fully take advantage of that?
Bingo.
Most new car loans, you run somewhere between 3 to 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking to fully maximize that. You are going to need to either take somewhere between $30,000 to $60,000 in interest for three. And then if you're just looking at the raw cost of the car, you're looking at cars that are likely going to be in excess of $50,000.
Which to that point, I want to speak to our listeners. There is a very wide variety of Americans that do not purchase cars of that price.
No,
There are a lot of Americans that are to get by purchase from used lots that don't pay that
bro,
amount,
with those wild what
bruh.
quick story time. Thing. I started from the bottom. Now I'm here.
Yeah, here.
I had a car loan. It was a 3-year car loan on a $10,000 car with a stupidly high interest. Not a TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm paying $5 towards the principal every year, but it was high, and I think I'm concerned. Like I said, concerns about that. Is it now an opportunity for some of these car lots to even be more predator like on some subprime people who are looking for cars? Like back to the question, if you're looking at a $50,000+ car, you're looking at a car payment in excess of $600-$700. So
most Americans aren't affording that.
Not at all. Not at
No.
all. So again, it's like, is this actually going to help people? Who's it going to help?
Yeah.
If we're just talking about the
Those that
economy,
can afford it.
yeah. Like I said, Trump and his friends who want to spare us of trying to figure out what to do with wealth.
More money, more problems. We don't want that for y'all.
The one piece in the I'll hold that. We're coming back to that one. You go.
Well, with the covering the tax cuts and extension program. Before we move on, I just want to extend the question to our listeners, and I want to hopefully get into the habit of us doing this to invoke a little bit of dialogue and discussion about this. But for the middle income household, when you think about potentially this $815 savings, would $815 make a dent in your yearly expense?
Right.
And I hope that the collective answer would be no. When you look at the price of, I'm just going with children. You look at the price of formula, which I know, brother, you know all too well, and soon I will once again. But the price of formula, the price of Pampers, the price of gas, the price of food,
daycare, if you're fortunate
oh
enough
my
to,
God, Jesus Christ, bro, don't even get me on that tangent on daycare. I'm about to get right back in that arena, but you think about something like this. Does this really? And that's why I asked the question earlier: is this bill helpful, or this extent of it, is it helpful to the middle class household when you look at what we have to pay, what we face, what we have to try to afford, and should we accept the bigger cuts for potentially, if you view it as a bigger cut for the rich, do you benefit that or accept that if we're all getting something? And I think sometimes that people look at, well, everybody has to get some slice of the pie. Even if my slice of the pie is small, at least the pie is getting sliced. But when you have something categorized as the big, beautiful bill, then who is it big and beautiful for? Is it big and beautiful for the people who matter the most? And I will go out and on the limb and say that I believe that the middle class Americans are the ones that keep the dream, the hope alive of what America is. And from my political view, I just believe that if you don't take care of the middle class American people, then you don't have an America, in my honest opinion.
Yeah.
When you think about manufacturing, when you think about agriculture, when you think about the things that we do, we are the backbone. And I say we because I grew up as a middle
Mm.
class American and seen the struggle of my single mother. I believe that when you see certain bills, and we really should dissect and look at this and take the bill for what it says. But in totality, as Manny spoke before, who is this really for? And does that speak to who truly matters? Not saying that everybody doesn't matter, but you have a large pool of people that are the backbone of this nation. Are we doing the things to help them continue or strive to be better than what generationally they've been in? That would be my question to our listeners.
That's a long ass question to our.
I know, bro. It was low key almost a mini rant. But because I truly, as a child that was that was born in a single family home, the middle class family is a very important set of demographics for me, because I understand how much and the struggles that we went through. Oftentimes, I look at some of these politicians, and I'm like, they never have experienced probably a slither of what the middle class Americans have experienced, and if they did, they maybe would understand a little bit more and care a little bit more when they go into Washington and fight for these people. Which, let's be honest, the middle class people are the ones that primarily put you there. So I think about stuff when I see bills like this, brother. So
Even more on that one. Let's also just be honest about it.
yeah,
I don't see enough savings in here
yeah,
that would even remotely begin to have people feel better.
yep,
Like, you might feel like, oh, okay, maybe we went 2 years back. Inflation and the impacts of inflation on the average family has been ridiculous,
yeah.
you
I
know?
agree.
And so you're looking to have to cut or get back into the economy, into Americans' hands, a dollar figure that this bill isn't going to provide, nor do I think any bill will provide
Yeah,
at this standpoint. And I think that's the rough part for a lot of people right now who are like, we
mm-hmm.
need help. We need someone. I feel like a lot of Trump's promises, especially around the economy, was really biting into that. Hey, you remember what it felt like when I was president? You know, wages were going up, things were still cheap. During the Biden administration, everything got more expensive. And numerically, that is a factual statement.
Yeah,
But you sold people kind of this dream of going
yeah.
back to your pre-COVID economy, and that's not coming back.
That's not coming back at
No
all.
bill is going to fix that. So I think a lot of supporters, even just from, and guys, we're still on the economic piece on this. There are a
Yeah,
whole lot of
yeah.
other things we're getting ready to break
Way
into.
more. Yeah.
But if that was the dream that you sold, a lot of people are getting ready to be disappointed.
They're gonna be very disappointed. And as I've always said, you sold them hopes and dreams and you gave them Cheerios. That's not how this works, and this is not the realization of what's going forward. And this is, to not get on a tangent about this, but this is why I have a issue sometimes with the political realm, because people are they're biting off of his words. They believe this man. They treat this man as if he is a savior, and if he says that this is going to happen, they truly believe this is going to happen. But it's not, it does not seem, I'm not going to say impossible, but it does not seem possible.
Impossible.
So
Sorry, I watched that earlier.
why not be real with the American people so that they don't gamble their future, but they invest in their future off the hopes of the reality of what you speak and the realness of what's to come?
Because people like power. People like power. People like staying in power.
Kanye West said at one point, no one man should have all that power.
Well, and to think about it, before Trump became president,
Yeah.
when was the last time you think he was in a grocery store buying groceries?
Oh, bro. I
Even
bet
better,
he ain't never touched a cart.
bro, even better. Look at a lot of the members of Congress.
Yeah.
When have a lot of them,
Yep.
Republican or Democrat?
Yep.
You know, I say confidently that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer,
Yep.
oh man, I'm just going to go with them because they
Yeah.
both old. You know,
Yeah.
others as well. When was the last time either of them seen the inside of a Harris Teeter or a Piggly Wiggly or a
I would completely
Safeway
agree.
or an Albert? Like, so it's this out of touchness. Like, oh
Yep.
yeah, you know,
Yep.
you're going to save $10,000. Great. That's over the course of the year. That's a big number at the end that ultimately, when you take that $10,000 and you roll it out over the course of the year, that barely covers the cost of daycare,
And
if at all.
This is why I have a problem with the people that go to Washington not being in touch with the American people, because you have not a single clue of what it's like down here. You have an idea of the people that you encompass, which are the people that are in the same deep pockets that you're in and making this stuff. These people don't worry about the cost of bread going up 10 cents, but there are some families in this country that if bread goes up 10 cents, they're not getting bread.
No, I disagree with that a little. I think there are more people that are more normal when they get to Congress. My issue.
Put an asterisk on that.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
When they get to Congress.
When they get to Congress.
And I should have prefaced my statement by saying that I believe that some of them, when they get there, do understand. But when they become career or have been washed in the Washington water, they tend to forget.
Well, my point was getting ready to come from the standpoint of these one issue people who go to Congress, like, yeah, I'm here for pro-choice or pro-life. I'm here because of the great that one issue got you there. But what are you doing? You're responsible for more than this.
Yep.
You were responsible for the economy. You're responsible for national defense.
Yeah.
You're responsible for Medicare. You're responsible for Medicaid. You're responsible for weed legislation.
Yep.
You're responsible for oil regulations. You're responsible for the environment. What are you doing to make sure that you are ready to be able to answer these questions? Because you know what the answer isn't? Listening to a lobbyist and exclusively just listening to a lobbyist.
Yep. And I've had a conversation before politically with someone I worked with years ago. And he voted for a person that was just on this one particular issue that he cared about. And I said, so then when this issue comes up, where do you stand? And I knew by knowledge that his stance was opposite of the person that he was voting for. And I said, well, the person you're voting for doesn't agree with that. So then where do you stand with just electing somebody off of one single issue? That's, to me, that is that. I'm gonna call it what I believe that it is. I think that's just as unpatriotic as anything else.
And if you look historically over time, you go back to, well, I'm going to say the Tea Party.
Yeah,
the Tea Party with the Republican Party came up because people felt as though elected officials were not listening to them.
Yep.
And what you ended up having is, and I think it's been one of these fundamental differences between the Republicans and Democrats, but it's now seemed to like switch over where Republicans in that Tea Party era, that's where you got the rhino phrase from, is that if you didn't believe, the Republican tent had 10 key items. If you didn't believe all 10, you were not a Republican, and people got pushed out. Where during that same time, Democrats were just like, oh, if we could all come together on this one issue, then, you know, who cares about the other 9 issues? We agree on this one thing. You're on our side. So it's a very large, sweeping tent. That's now flip flop. You're now seeing some of that on the Democrat side, where now, hey, if you don't believe in gay rights, if you don't pro choice, just going down the list, you're not a Democrat. Whereas you've seen Trump very much wide open the tent, and everyone can come in. And I think one issue voters are extremely dangerous. I get your issue is your issue, but you need to look beyond your one issue.
Yeah.
You need to look beyond your one issue because
I
it
agree.
matters. It matters. And it puts people in hard decisions. And that's why I think people need to take voting more seriously. Because if you're in a position where your top issue is X and your candidate, candidate A votes in agreement with your top issue, but these other 9 issues, y'all are as far from each other as night and day.
Yep.
But this other candidate on all your other issues, right in line with you, but the issue you care most about does not align. It's an awkward position.
Yeah.
Who are you going to vote for?
Yep.
And I think it's dangerous to just go off your top issue. You got to look at everything. You got to consider everything. So.
Yeah, man. I totally agree. And hopefully we will have more of that in the future. But that seems to be a norm that is happening now with voters. And I think that may come from, I hate to say it this way, but maybe an ignorance on how things really work.
I think it's a couple things, and for our listeners, me and Jeezy did not plan on having this discussion.
Bro, we really
far,
didn't, bro. We done went off we done took that hard left detour.
But y'all buckle up here. We're gonna keep going down this and see where we land.
Yeah.
Of most, of most developed nations,
yeah,
the U.S. votes the most.
Yeah.
And essentially, federally, we vote every 2 years.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot to have to stay up on. That's a lot to have to understand. Our government and our bills, in most cases that go through Congress, taking out the whole executive order things, we don't make changes fast. But essentially, like, look at the House of Representatives. They essentially get into office. They got about 6 months to start moving on stuff, and then they got to start thinking about reelection. And some of your controlled people have never stopped. They just stay on campaign mode the entire time.
Yeah.
So they don't get to settle in, but you're asking voters to get up to speed federally on everything every 2 years. Then on top of that, if you look at the local level, you're usually voting every year in some capacity, be it at the state level or even the local level. Yeah. We vote a lot. And there's this whole context around voter fatigue. And it's hard to stay up on everything nationally and at the state level and at the local level. So I think voters are burnt out. And I think that's where parties on both sides benefit, because you just get to advertise your one issue and then, like, hey, we'll tell you how to vote on the rest of them.
Yeah.
North Carolina is an interesting state where we're one of the few states where you actually have people at the ballots on election day. That's not something that happens in other places. You got the signs and stuff, but you don't have people there talking and, like, encouraging you. So that's where the danger, it's one of the things that I'm glad North Carolina did away with, and that's straight ticket voting, where you can be like, all the Democrats, here we go. No, like, think and go through it.
Yep.
But it's hard work. It's hard work. And, it's not lost on me the amount of work that it requires for someone to be up to speed on everything that's happening.
Yeah. I think that when you have so much going on in your day-to-day life,
bruh,
that
kids,
is a massive,
family, work. It's a lot to ask.
And I think that, and I'll just be honest in the dynamic of our podcast, because obviously, Manny has had a long-standing approach and stance in politics, but I come from a very real world perspective, and I can understand and grasp that, and I can remember, and just in transparency, I can remember I'm a registered Democrat, and I can remember when it was straight ticket, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go in there and vote Democrat. But as I started to educate myself in the conversations that kind of built the framework of this friendship that me and Manny have in politics, and ultimately starting this podcast, it made me realize, like, while I have a lot going on in my day-to-day life, I serve a duty to go and do what's necessary to educate myself on that work. But I can also be honest and real that most people do not. And I've even had conversations with people. I've had a conversation as recent as this past election where someone's like, just the thought of, hey, do you vote? And I'm like, yeah, that right there was like, you vote? Like, yes, that's my duty. So then, even for that to be a mindset, and I was in a room full of men, and I was like the only one that was an adamant voter. So I'm like, okay, well, I already know that going forward, just any issues you are not educated on. That is the consensus of a lot of people. So then, to kind of bring this home, when you think of this big, beautiful bill, who are you sending to Washington to fight on your behalf?
You jumped the horse. Before they can even fight, are we sending the right people to Washington that are going to spend the time necessary to read the 1,000 pages?
You're right, brother. You're right. Who? Because there's some people that we can say, and that we can handpick in Washington and say, okay, that person stayed up and read them 1,000 pages.
Right.
But when we do the statistics and do the numbers, how many are staying up reading them 1,000 pages, and how many aren't? Oh yeah, that's an overwhelming number.
I'm going to introduce something new for the pod right here as well. It is the Pardon the Politics Elected Official Challenge.
Yes, sir.
And it's inspired by the one Curtis 50 Cent Jackson.
Yes, sir.
From now on, I think every person running for office should have to read a page out of a Harry Potter
book.
Like, I just need to make sure you can read.
Because how many of y'all actually can comprehend what them bills is saying? Because we know some of y'all don't have no backgrounds in politics, so some of this verbiage might be going over your head, and you saying yay when you really should be saying nay. But you don't understand, but because somebody said, or somebody came up there on that Capitol and promoted this big, beautiful bill, well, I know that if he said it's good, I think it's good. No, sir. No, ma'am.
I challenge everybody to go to their next open forums and say, I challenge you to the Pardon the Politics Challenge, and can you read a page out of a Harry Potter book? Can you read that page? Because if you can't, you don't have the basic reading abilities that is necessary for you to serve in elected office. From president down to dog catcher. If you can't read me that page, you don't need to be here.
Because you're not understanding, and I don't need you signing off on nothing that got to do with anything with my life if you can't understand and comprehend it. And I think that might have been a lot of this that went on with this bill.
Right. I mean, also, this is not uncommon for Congress. And then my man,
brother, let me ask you this. When this was introduced, how long did they have to go through these 1,000 pages?
I don't even know.
Okay, because I feel like we've seen it before where they give them a very short window. And if any of you have ever read a Harry Potter book, some people ain't gonna be able to get through it in 5 days.
Bro, not to be able to comprehend it good.
Nope.
But there is one person that I know with full confidence read this.
Yes, sir.
And we can.
Is it our brother?
It is our good brother Rand Paul.
Shout out to Rand Paul. What Rand Paul say?
Rand Paul read it, and he had this to say about the big, beautiful bill.
The House bill is going to add about $4 trillion to the debt ceiling. The Senate bill adds $5 trillion. There's nothing fiscally conservative about expanding the debt ceiling more than we've ever done it. The House bill
more than we've ever done.
I can count on Rand Paul to be real, bro.
Bruh, he just wants to make sure all the ones equal all the zeros, and that's what I appreciate. Rand Paul consistently calls out his colleagues for two things: being not conservative when they said that they were going to be conservative, and giving people ridiculous timelines to read these giant omnibus bills. One of Rand Paul's favorite things. Jeezy, I am looking forward to December.
Bruh.
Because December 23rd every year, Rand Paul releases his Festivus report on Congress.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Oh, man.
I was not aware of my brother's work.
Oh, yes. It is. Now that I done got you real juiced up on politics, you're going to enjoy this report.
Oh, yeah.
He basically
I gotta put this on the
goes
calendar.
through all the bills in Congress that year, and just like, this is wasteful, this is wasteful, this is wasteful. I didn't know that. Bro,
where brother Rand Paul from?
Bro, Kentucky.
Shout out to Kentucky, bro.
Man.
Y'all sent a good one up there.
Man, they also sent Mitch McConnell.
Oh, never mind. Well, I mean, they cancel each other out. Kumsa.
But every year he drops this report. It's one of my favorite things in politics.
Oh yeah, I'm invested now.
Because now you got to take it in context.
Okay.
Because some of the things again, like we're talking about with Doge just taking cuts on things. They'll point out, hey, they were doing research on monkeys for this random thing. Well, that was part of an FDA study for XY. Some of them are like that. But it is a great compilation of things that the federal government spends. And now in this report, he's not advocating or against.
He's just stating.
He's just saying we paid to do this. Okay. And some of the stuff is wild.
Okay. I look forward. To this, brother. I'm putting it on the calendar.
Oh no, that might just be the episode.
Yep. We got our Christmas episode.
And brother Rand, I would like to formally invite you to join us. Mm-hmm. Do your release of your Festivus report here with the boys on the pod.
Yep. We would definitely give you the space and opportunity to share such a political stunt that we need.
Bro, does it yearly. I love it.
I love it every year, bro. So, man, I don't know how we're gonna cover the rest of this bill, brother.
We might need to do a part 2.
Yeah, we might have to do a part 2 on this. So we may not get through all of it, but we definitely might have to bring another part of it up. But the next part I want to bring up is healthcare and social program reform. So in this part of the bill, the pros of this bill, part of the bill aims to reduce long-term federal welfare costs, and it pushes more adults to join the workforce, which I believe that with some of the cuts that have happened with the Trump administration, this is something they definitely want to push people back in. But the cons of this part of the bill, it could remove millions from Medicaid, and the SNAP cuts may leave low-income families without a safety net. So, with that being said, this part of the bill, does encouraging work make sense if there are no jobs or there is no support out there? And are we balancing budgets on the backs of the most vulnerable? What are your thoughts, brother?
All right, so let's add the first. We're going to start talking about Medicaid.
Okay.
So under the bill, starting in 26, non-disabled adults will be required to work, be in job training, or volunteer for at least 80 hours per month to keep their Medicaid coverage.
Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to call it out.
That is very sticky.
Ew, guys, yeah. But it's like, okay. Are there people that abuse Medicaid?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yes.
Should we do something about this? Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. But you know where I think there's a lot more wasteful spending in Medicaid? With all of these companies
Mm.
that be exploiting these loopholes
Preach, preacher.
to overcharge on healthcare coverages.
Yep.
When
It
you
is.
need just basic asprin, but you
Mm-hmm.
giving people high strength painkillers
Mm-hmm.
because you can
Mm-hmm.
bill Medicaid a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Start
what?
there.
I would rather you start there
Yep.
because you probably save more money
More
than
money.
taking these 10 families and making them work for 2 weeks out of
Yep.
the year.
My thing is, in doing that, where with this administration, we've seen that there have been flaws in regulating whatever they do.
Mm-hmm.
When you say that with the disabled, right? What falls under that umbrella?
Man,
And how do you regulate to make sure that everything is falling correctly under that umbrella? Because now you may be entering people into the workforce or volunteering that have no business being in those areas
Mhm.
whatsoever.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I had the same question. And so when they talk about non-disabled adults, it typically means an adult that's between the ages of 19 to 64 who are not classified as having a disability by the Social Security Administration or Medicaid eligibility criteria. So someone who's not considered someone is considered a non-disabled adult if they have no official medical disability determination from Social Security and Medicaid. They are not receiving supplemental security income or Social Security disability insurance, are physically and mentally capable of working, are not pregnant, and are not caring for a dependent that qualifies them for an exemption.
So who is going to make sure that everyone that's on Medicaid meets these requirements or don't?
There are groups within the Social Security Administration who are responsible for this. But here's my concern. There are many adults out there across the US that have chronic health issues,
Mm-hmm.
or we also know that there is a battle around mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a generalized stigmatism around stigmatism.
Yeah. You
That
read the
seemed
Bible.
that seemed right. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Who aren't classified as disabilities.
Yeah.
You know, there are people who exist that have really, really high ADHD
Yeah.
that would not allow them to be able to work
Yeah.
capably. And again, just going back, so cost of validating all this, we're doing that. But if you're looking at now doing this at scale, how much more does it cost? But ultimately, I just think you could do this better by going after the people who systematically
Yeah.
go at one person.
But
Again, one person systematically uh, filing incorrect paperwork at the for Medicaid coverage is a problem. We are not saying that it is not a problem, but instead of catching this one family, I really think we should be going after this firm who's
no,
overcharging consistently.
but why is that not the view of this administration? Because I could have sworn, and stepping back, I could have sworn that this administration said, or at least the talk was, from certain lawmakers that we were not going to touch Medicaid. Am I wrong in that?
It's it is it is impossible. You know, if you look at all of our spending
Yeah.
that we do federally, one is on the national debt. The next place is around um the next place is around healthcare and Medicaid and dealing with all of that. And I think you could argue, if I put my devil's advocate hat on,
Yeah.
you could argue they're not cutting Medicaid. They have not removed any care. You know, they're not removed any money, but they need you to prove that you need it.
So they're not cutting Medicaid. They're just cutting the waste, fraud, and abuse of Medicaid.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, but in
Mm-hmm.
that we have seen by the pattern that this administration has had that once they go to cutting the waste, fraud, and abuse, there are there are a great number of people that are impacted that should
Mm-hmm.
not be impacted. So my concern is that in doing this, and I want people to understand my stance is that I believe that any waste, fraud, and abuse needs to be cut,
Yeah.
but at what length? I think all of us have tried to trim a cut of beef one time and have maybe cut too much of
Cut
the
a little
good
too.
beef
Mm-hmm.
more than the fat that we were trying to cut. So I think that in your point, man, what you're saying is that I believe that there is a much better way to trim the fat or the waste, fraud, and abuse off of Medicaid than going off of what they're trying to do now.
Yep.
Because ultimately, I feel like this will have an impact on the community more heavily, and then you're going to have people, and just this is my vision, is that you're going to have people that are going to say, wait, no, I need this help. And now I have to go through this lengthy process with
Mm-hmm.
all because there's a lot of moving parts now in the
You got to
department.
get people to sign off. You got
You
to
got a
get
lot.
you mail in and fax in forms in
Wait, hold
2025.
on, Mail in and fax. So let's stop right there. Now you got a lot of people who don't have those capabilities at
Right.
home. So now I have to travel to try to get these capabilities met, or I got to go to the Medicaid office, and now I got to
Mm-hmm.
set up appointments. And but what do I do when you tell me that I don't deserve these rights, and then they get cut, and then now I got to spend 30 days trying to get to prove that I need this because of this change. And now all of a sudden, I don't have what I need to feed my family for 30 to 45 days based off a change that you've made that you could have went in one area and let's say that, okay, target these areas first and let's see what that provides, what that yields as a cut versus attacking those that are supported by these programs and having to make them do these necessary things and changes. If somebody's been on welfare or Medicare for 10 years, that
Mm-hmm.
person 9 times out of 10 don't need to be in the workforce. There are some that need to that are milking the system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to acknowledge that. We've all seen it in our communities. There's somebody we know that sell food stamps. We've all met a person walk in the grocery store. Hey, look, you give me $20, I give you $40 of food stamp.
Yep.
We understand there are those people, but there are some legitimate families. There are some legitimate people that are benefiting from this system, and I think putting these guardrails up and redirecting how these benefits flow may be more harm than good. And in long term, trying to figure out what this program looks like without the waste, fraud, and abuse, without trying to affect those families and ultimately putting them in a much harder position when we think about, for instance, what we talked about earlier with the tax cuts and the benefits that they may be having and not having the necessities to be able to live a manageable life as a middle class American or a low income family.
Right. Oh no, and then some of you guys might be listening to this. Well, what can they do? John Oliver, in Last Week Tonight, he did an episode last year talking about hospice care.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a group of doctors who were being paid by hospice care facilities to refer patients over to their facilities that were in good Medicaid standings that didn't necessarily need to be there. But with referring them over and then them being relatively healthy-ish, stayed in hospice care for ridiculous amounts of time while these facilities continue to bill Medicaid. Now think about that for a second. Hospice care is made for people who death is at their front door. They're going to be around for, I think it's like a month to 3 months. Yeah. And there are stories out there of people who have been in hospice care for years that didn't need to be there, that were healthy, completely healthy. Do you realize how much money that is for a
Bruh.
hospice facility
Yep.
to have someone healthy there that doesn't actually need any type of care, just sitting
Yep.
there taking? So you mean to tell me that it is more worth going after these 5 families than going after this facility that just keeps cranking them in and out by giving kickbacks to doctors for referring them over?
Wow.
Y'all, come
Wow.
on now.
There's a much better way to skin this cat. And
Bro,
this
there's
ain't
got to
it.
be.
And
There's
this
got
ain't
to
it.
be.
But I think that goes to speaking to the level of solving a problem and the extent of knowledge that you have in fixing a problem. We've seen it all before. There are some times that you can go to work and your manager may have a very surface level approach to how to fix a problem without digging deep into the knowledge and saying, wait a minute, and you may be that person that works up under them and say, no. There's a much deeper thing that if we solve this, we may yield the results that we're looking for,
Right.
but this surface level approach isn't necessarily going to fix the problem. It may do more harm than good. I think sometimes when I see stuff like this, that our lawmakers may have the same approach when it comes to this, because me and you are guys that are underneath the surface that can sit here and say that this is a better way or a much better way to handle this issue. Why isn't it that the people in Washington don't see the same thing or ignore this and say, well, it's much easier for us to do this than have to go tackle this?
Man, one of the things that I hear from a mentor of mine at work
Mm-hmm.
is sometimes you got to go have the hard conversations.
Mm.
And it is a much easier conversation to just say, we're doing it to all of these people
Mm-hmm.
versus having that same conversation with an entire business and not even single business, an entire industry on
Yeah.
how we need to regulate you to make sure that the bad actors in
Mm-hmm.
your arena
Mm-hmm.
aren't going wild.
Yep.
And it's a hard conversation that I feel like in Washington that we're not willing to have.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point, Manny. I think that ultimately, in a lot of this bill, once these things are implemented, I'm very interested to see the impact, because how many people voted, going back to what you said, those single line issue voters,
Mm-hmm.
how many people voted for this
Because
change?
of immigration.
Bruh, or,
'Cause,
or gun control.
even better, egg prices.
Bruh.
Eggs.
How was it worth you voting for that $2.90 increase for you to lose out on your Medicaid? I want our listeners to truly understand that. But as we move forward, and I think, Manny, in all honesty, we're gonna have to do a part 2 this
Oh,
week.
absolutely.
But,
Yep.
and our listeners, y'all tune in, because we're gonna do a part 2, because we're not even halfway
Bro,
through the coverage of this big beautiful bill that we are already running up the meter. But I want our listeners to question themselves and ask this, as you listen to this episode: should Medicaid have work requirements, and how would these cuts affect people in your community? And I had a conversation, Manny, earlier this week with somebody. It was centered around here in North Carolina. I don't know if you're familiar, but I believe in the Goldsboro region, there was a child that middle school kid that had went to school with a gun in his backpack
Mm.
that he got from his stepfather, and a
Mm.
kid in the class saw it. And I actually am privy to this information because my coworker that sits beside, whose office is beside me, their family member is in law enforcement and kind of gave me the deets. So basically the kid saw it and he was like, I'm gonna tell. And the kid was like, well, if you tell, I'm gonna shove this gun down your throat. And so the kid told, which I applaud the kid, because most kids
It's
would have been
courage.
scared in that read.
Takes
But
courage.
he spoke up in courage, and this boy was dealt with. And his stepfather was dealt with as well too, because he was the one that gave him the father, which I will say for content, he was an EMS worker in the area. So he's someone who provides safety to people. But in that conversation I had with her, I'm saying that to say this. we got on the topic of gun reform and whatnot, and how this applies to this is that the statement that I made is that I wish that people cared more about issues that impacted their neighbor and not just them. So I say that in this question of how these cuts affect the community in which you live in, it may not impact you directly. You may not be on Medicaid or SNAP or none of these things, but think about the people in your community. Think about the people that this truly impacts. And when you vote, and the question that I posed to her is that when you vote, do you vote for yourself or do you vote for your community? Because we all should vote, at least, in my opinion, we should vote for our community. Even if I may not agree with certain things, I have a understanding and a duty and a privilege to make sure that my brother, my sister that's next to me feels safe and just as protected as I do as well too. So when I vote, I don't just vote for myself and my family, I vote for my community. So when you think about these issues that are coming up in this big, beautiful bill, it may not have an impact or a direct effect on you. But what about the community, the people that you love, the lady that you see at the grocery store, the family that your kids play with, those people that may not necessarily be in the same position as you are financially, but financially they require or maybe necessarily need some of this assistance that they may not be privy to this anymore because the government is tackling this issue from a very surface level and one-dimensional mindset. And where does that leave those people that are your brother and your sister in your neighborhood?
That's a real Christian view of this.
Brother, we all supposed to care about our neighbors now.
If only in Congress we had more red letter Christians,
bruh,
than red hat Christians.
Bruh, thank you. preach, brother, preach.
And look, okay, so yeah, I'm gonna do my part and play my role in this podcast. There are studies that show that going out and working and that encouragement to work and people working gives a sense of pride to that person and that family that you do not get by just sitting at home. There are studies, and we would be incorrect to not speak on those as well. But again, there are bigger ways to be tackling the issue of Medicaid exploitation than at this level. And I would argue that coming down to the person by person level is inefficient. So, Elon, I know you haven't stepped away from Doge yet.
You sure?
But there's time to address this inefficiency with the responsibilities that we are putting on medical providers who exploit the healthcare system. And I
would agree.
And the only other part on the healthcare piece that I want to mention very, very briefly, well, I'll mention two. Medicaid won't cover gender affirming care for anyone. But the other one, and it'll get real interesting to see how this plays out, is that states must cover more of the administrative costs and repay funds if errors are high to their to the SNAP program. So now you're putting more of a responsibility on the states to execute these programs that they already don't have the money for because you as a federal entity provide that. And unfortunately, federal government, states like North Carolina are required to have a balanced budget. Also something you all should consider, but I'm going to let y'all chill.
I'm going to let y'all live.
I'm going to let y'all live. I'm going to let y'all live. But because there's a whole nother topic around unfunded federal mandates. But we gonna let y'all chill. We're going to let y'all chill.
But I think that's something that we have to think about. And I think for our listeners,
boy, you need to clear your throat.
I know, right? I had to get that together. Bro, I don't know what happened.
Inhaling helium.
Bro, I had to get that together. But I think that we're going to definitely have to do a part 2 on this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's so much in this bill that impacts the American people. And I think that we would be doing a disservice by trying to rush through it. and give y'all the short version of it. I think you guys deserve. So be on the lookout for part 2 of this episode as we break down the rest of this big, massive, beautiful bill.
Shout out to LeVar Ball. LeVar Ball, go get your money, sir.
Yeah, you need to do that. The BBB bill. So we're gonna move on from this segment, but we'll definitely pick it back up in our part 2 of this episode that will be coming out later on this week. So as we move forward, we're gonna go into our segment that we all enjoy that comes at this time, and that is our pickle of the week.
We've got your pickle. We've got your pickle. We've got your pickle.
All right. We are at our Pickle of the Week segment. So this week's Pickle of the Week features not one politician, but it is a coalition of casualties, if you will.
So you got a jar of pickles this week.
I got a jar of pickles, brother. Straight from Mount Olive. Shout out to North Carolina. But we have a coalition of casualties, and that is 7 states left out in the cold or the floods or the tornadoes, however you will, after having their FEMA disaster aid reliefs or requests, denied under President Trump's administration. From coast to coast, both red and blue states found themselves asking the same question: where's our federal help? That list of denied states go as following. Currently, is North Carolina,
broke neck;
Washington,
broke neck;
Arkansas,
broke neck;
West Virginia,
broke neck;
California,
broke neck;
Tennessee,
broke neck;
and Wisconsin to pull in the rear.
Severely injured L1 through 5.
Now, I will say, I believe that from a presidential perspective, and I could be wrong because I don't have that information handy, but the majority of these 7 states voted for Trump in the previous election. Correct, Manny?
Yeah, I believe so.
So why this is a pickle is it's not just a paperwork problem, but it is a policy problem. Trump's FEMA, under acting chief David Richardson, is pushing for states to basically, quote, fend for themselves. The federal government is stepping back, and these states are left holding the bill for disasters they didn't cause. And whether it's a political favoritism or it's just cost cutting, the outcome is still the same. And I wanted to bring this up because in our great state of North Carolina, the region that was affected by disaster, and I believe for North Carolina, this was the extended aid that was needed for Hurricane Helene. In this recovery, which Josh Stein has warned that the state could be out of hundreds of millions of dollars trying to foot this cost by themselves without the federal government. I wonder if Trump doing this because he's ticked off about how the Supreme Court race turned out, but there's neither here nor there. But when you think about this, primarily in our state that I can speak of, which is North Carolina, most of the counties that were affected by Hurricane Helene were Trump counties. And we saw that there was a lot of, and we talked about in a previous episode in season 1 about the misinformation that was being spread about FEMA and how FEMA was trying to help some of those people, and they were denying it because of the instruction of what Trump was saying. And now you have their king, their ruler, telling them that he's not going to do anything to help them. That has to be a shot to the gut, I would imagine, if you were a Trump supporter or you voted for Trump, and now ultimately you realize that these federal funds are not going to be withheld. Not going to be given to you, or the state's going to have to figure out how they're going to help you. And obviously, as Josh Stein has pointed out in North Carolina, this could be setting them back tremendously. And I think it's just odd, and I'm not saying this as a pun or to be funny, but for those that voted for Trump, now you have to rely on, in North Carolina here, our Democratic governor to try to hopefully maybe pull you out of the water to help you repair and rebuild that which you have lost when you casted your ballot for someone who said that he would do any and everything and all things to help you. So for these 7 states, you are definitely in a pickle because you have to indeed fend for yourself. And I will say this, What happens in the next hurricane season when it hits?
Oh, the one that they've already said, the FEMA, that we not prepared for,
Bruh.
that one that's coming up.
What are we gonna do if FEMA says no again? Should Congress intervene, or is this just going to be another executive flex? Or who benefits politically from these denials? Is it a power play heading into 2026? The world may never know.
But we may not know in advance, but we're about to find out.
We're about to find out. So in all of this, as it being our pickle, it seems that Trump's new FEMA motto is, if you break it, you buy it. But if the sky breaks it, tough luck, buy it anyway. So when disaster strikes and the White House turns its back, the real emergency might not be the storm, it's the silence from Washington. And for those 7 states, the silence is deafening and as well as expensive. So those are my pickle of the weeks, those 7 states. Good luck. Peace be the journey. And as somebody said, may you have the day that you voted for.
I mean, yeah. Yeah. You know, it'd be like that.
It'd be like that sometimes,
It'd
bro.
be like, but I do generically feel bad for the people who did not vote for this day.
There's somebody that said, I did not ask for this, and is punching air right now because the people around them did. And it's one of those things where I would drive around the community and just be like, I told you so.
Right.
I blasted as loud as I could on my radio. I told you so. I told you so.
Just strap the speakers on the roof.
Yep. I told you so. This is what you asked for. So yeah, that's my pickle for the week, brother. So as always, we are at the end of our episode where we have our spotlights of the week. So my brother, what is your spotlight of the week?
Man, well, I got 2.
Okay.
2, one looking back and one looking forward. So
okay.
I was good. I was doing good.
You're doing good, bro. You're doing good this episode, bro.
But President Trump was the commencement speaker at several graduations. None more recent than at West Point, our military academy, and he had several things to say, and I was going to just read these to you, but I think some of these might just be better if we hear them from the man himself.
A trophy wife. It didn't work out too well, but that doesn't work out too well. I must tell you, a lot of trophy wives doesn't work out, but it made him happy for a little while at least. But he found a new wife. He sold his little boat and he got a big yacht. He had one of the biggest yachts anywhere in the world. He moved for a time to Monte Carlo and he led the good life.
What?
And time went by and he got bored. And 15 years later, the company that he sold to called him and they said, the housing business is not for us. You have to understand, when Bill Levitt was hot, when he had momentum, he'd go to the job sites every night. He'd pick up every loose nail.
Bro, okay, so I'm going to just stop that first clip there. How does Bill Levitt feel? This man's just chilling. It sounds like he's counting his money. But next thing you know, he's talking about him. What? So what I would think if I was sitting in the crowd is, sir, I'm in the military. We're about to go to war. I ain't got time to think about your yachts. What about the military? What about us? Well, Trump had a quote for you too.
Oh, okay.
Buying you new airplanes, brand new, beautiful planes, redesigned planes, brand new planes, totally stealth planes. I hope they're stealth. I don't know. That whole stealth thing, I'm sort of wondering. I mean, if we shape a wing this way, they don't see it, but the other way they see it, I'm not so sure. But that's what they tell me. Buying you new airplanes.
What?
Bro, what is this man talking about, bro?
What?
Why is he at a commencement speaking, acting like he's on the campaign trail, bro?
Bruh, he never stops. He never stops. You remember what I said earlier about people who Trump just never stopped. Can't stop, won't stop.
He only know one method, bro.
Bruh, him and Diddy. Can't stop, won't stop.
Ain't no party like a Trump party, bro. Take that. Take that.
bro, ain't no like, and I'm just like, come on, like, and then this one.
Of the U.S. Armed Forces is not to host drag shows, to transform foreign cultures, but to spread democracy to everybody around the world at the point of a gun. The military's job is to dominate any foe and annihilate any threat to America anywhere, anytime, and any place. The job of the U.S. Armed.
So my first question with this is, I didn't know the military had drag shows.
I didn't know they did either.
So that's news to me. This might be news to the Joint Chief of Staffs.
Bruh.
But that, and then the more stressful part about this, at least that particular statement, was him saying that the point of the military, U.S. military, was to spread democracy. No, that's not. It's not. If you were happy with your leader, you keep him. The role of the U.S. military should be to intervene when there are crazy authoritarians in office who are attacking and hurting people and not listening to international law. That should be the point, that there's U.S. military involvement. And then one of the other quotes that he said, talking about NATO and our allies, that we will no longer send our military on missions unless there's a specific set goal in mind. And let me be clear. I'm pretty sure that there is a set goal.
In my we ain't never seen nobody to say, why we here?
Hey, just go drop a whole bunch of stuff on Ulaanbaatar, and because it's Tuesday. Trump is so wild all the time.
This was a terrible commencement speech, and I'm gonna be honest with you. If I just went through all the hassle and hardship that I had to do to graduate West Point, and I had to hear this man sound like that he was trying to recite the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe, I'm gonna be pissed. I didn't sign up for this. I'm grabbing my family. We going to Golden Corral.
I'm just sitting. But think about it, this entire group are getting ready to be officers in the military.
Yeah. Like, bro,
how many people in that audience were just like, you know what?
Yeah, what did the group chat say?
I'm gonna do my contract and I'm getting out.
I'm getting up out of here, bro.
Because no, absolutely. So that's my first spotlight.
Okay.
Trump wild dude. My second spotlight is looking forward, coming back to the Supreme Court. So we saw the Supreme Court start ruling on their stuff in last session. The big one from this week was regarding that online charter school that wanted, the Catholic charter school that wanted to take funds. ACB, Amy Coney Barrett, rescued herself, resulting in a deadlock. And in that deadlock, that means they leave the lower court's rule in play. So that does mean that this religious, Catholic school will not be getting state funds. And I agree with that. Just from the basics, if you got to do it for one, you got to do it for all. So you might as well just say no to everybody.
Yep.
But then, so that I think some people will see as win, some will see as a loss. I did not know there were virtual online charter schools. I may low key just get my kid in a regular school,
right?
And then when you get done, go ahead and go to this charter school randomly.
Yeah.
But in June, so the end of its term in June, there's a couple other cases that they are planning to rule on. The Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton. This case challenges a Texas law requiring age verification to access to adult content online, raising questions about free speech and how we're regulating the internet. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Very interesting.
The second one, the city and county of San Francisco versus the EPA. The court is going to decide whether the EPA can impose certain water quality standards without specifying the exact pollutant limits. So that's going to be a giant hit to how we federally regulate a lot of things, especially when we talk about the environment and pollutants. And then the last one, TikTok versus Garland. This case is going to be focusing on the constitutionality of the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. That's a long ass title for an act.
Fact.
Which affects the operation of foreign-owned apps like TikTok in the United States. So these are some big cases that are coming up, and we'll kind of see how they play out over the next month.
Gotcha.
And those are my spotlights of the week. What you got for us?
Well, I got something. I'm gonna start out a little bit rough, and then I'm gonna end it light. So pause. I ain't catch that, bro.
That was egregious.
It was egregious, erroneous on all counts. But my first spotlight I want to pull up is when global tensions hit home. So, in this spotlight, there's a heartbreaking and deeply alarming event that took place in our nation's capital. Two Israeli embassy staffers were fatally shot outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in what appears to be a politically and religiously motivated attack. The suspect was reportedly shouted "Free Palestine," making it clear that this was more than just some random act, but it was hate that was cloaked in ideology. So, why this matters and why I want us to look at this is that it exposes the vulnerability of protecting diplomats and Jewish institutes, even in D.C. I think it was just crazy that he was able to just to really run up on them like this. But it also signals that foreign conflicts are feeding domestic issues here at home. And I think that it forces a question: how do we protect free speech while stopping violent extremism? This is something that I feel like is starting to, I hate to say this phrase, but catching steam. But it seems that this is becoming more prevalent in our society.
Absolutely.
And it's something that we need to address. And it's important because while before we felt as though in our society here domestically, foreign issues and our stance on those issues necessarily weren't as egregious or as violent of a situation in society that happened here, it's starting to become a real life issue. I believe these two individuals were very young, were engaged, and lost their life not to anything that they did, but because of they represented maybe part of what this person felt was an issue. They lost their lives. So no one should lose their life over something this senseless. There's more than one way to express yourself in a very nonviolent way. This certainly does not prove the point of this individual, which I believe he's in custody. He did not he didn't lose his life in the midst of this.
At least at this point, because
Yeah.
they, I believe they came out and said they plan to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. So
To this point, I want to bring it as a spotlight. How do we address radicalization without infringing on civil liberties? And I think that is a very tough, tough question that we have to answer, because I don't believe, and I'm not saying this as if I want this to happen, but I don't believe that this issue is starting to go anywhere with the reach of social media and the internet. The birth of extremism is more prevalent now than ever before. So there has to be a question between federal protection addressing this radicalization, while not infringing on civil liberties, or even just U.S. leaders doing enough to combat hate-driven violence linked to these global issues. We've seen that Trump has been trying to tackle some of these things, but they kind of haven't been the right approach. Something that needs to be handled, but maybe not the right approach. And I think this is a very delicate situation and circumstance that we are going to have to address as the American people to protect those and make sure that this is not something that starts to become a recurring issue like we see with school shootings and other things of that nature. So
there's an entire regulation that I think is going to get brought up and looked at the moment we decide to actually start having a real conversation around this. And that is internet companies, like social media sites.
Yeah.
There's a regulation, and I can't remember the name or number of it, that essentially says they are not responsible for the content that their users post on their sites.
That's gonna change.
And well, it's been there, it's been tried, and I think it impacts how these companies operate.
Yeah.
So it has to be there. But it's like, to what is the line? And I think for years we have just avoided trying to draw a line in the sand.
Yeah.
And largely the line's been drawn in the sand by the user base.
Yeah.
You know, users leaving the site, and the users leave the site, they lose the data. When they lose the data, they're not able to as efficiently be able to make money off of that data.
Yeah.
So I think that's got to be in the discussion of how you solve this, but you are 1,000% correct. This is a horrible, senseless act of violence, and we got to figure out a way to address this in a more meaningful way.
And I think that you got to do it expeditiously.
Expeditiously.
This needs to be addressed fast, because with as much as we have our hands in internationally, there is a lot for these extremists to pull from that could be very detrimental to the American society and to our livelihood domestically. So hopefully that happens. So lastly, just to close out my spotlight, I just want to pull up a clip of President Donald Trump. As you know, that President Donald Trump is at war with a lot of entities, but one in particular, you know, that he's been going at Harvard. And I want to play us a clip that President Trump said, and I wish you guys could see this clip, because this was to give you kind of content on what this clip is. Trump was having a very bad hair day. So that should let you know what type of time. Let you know what type of time he was on in this clip. So this is an update on his war with Harvard.
A lot of the people need remedial math. Did you see that? Where these students can't add 2 and 2 and they go to Harvard. They want remedial math, and they're going to teach remedial math at Harvard. No, wait a minute. So why would they get in? How can somebody that can't add or has very basic skills, how do they get into Harvard? Why are they there? And then you see those same people picketing and screaming at the United States and screaming at, you know, they're anti-Semitic or they're something. We don't want Trump.
Bruh, first of all, I want to...
2 and 2.
Why did he say 2 and 2 like that, for one? 2, I'm starting to question, did Trump really go to college?
Right.
Because all of us have sat in orientation, if you've gone to college. And I want our listeners to understand, this is in the same bucket of Trump saying that Biden has stage 9 cancer, where there's only 4 stages of cancer. So let's stop talking stupid. But those of us that have been in college know that remedial math does not mean that you can't add 2 plus 2.
It does not.
That's not what remedial math is. And just so we understand, all colleges have remedial math.
But also, like, let's remember what Harvard is.
Yeah.
Like, Harvard is no different than East Carolina.
Bruh, it's just a school for...
Except they have a huge endowment. They do... Guess what? ECU does research, too.
We do
Shout out
research
to
too.
ECU Medical School.
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed.
Brody School of Science.
Yep. And
but it's largely a place where it's a regular school. They obviously have really smart kids there, really smart people. Went to ECU. You're on the pod with 2 of them right now.
Yes, indeed.
But also, like, rich people don't always have the smartest kids. Sorry, I was trying to figure out a more easier way to ease into it.
That's real.
But like, and he's like, how did these people get in? Well, when your parents drop $40 million into the endowment for a building, you know, that's how people get in.
Same way Barron Trump got into his college. Right. Like, really, let's not play stupid. But I just want us to understand the comical nature of Trump to 2 plus 2. And his continued war with Harvard, and just showing that he will not continue to pull out the stop. So I think this, for a spotlight, I think this is something to keep our attention on, because Harvard's not backing down. And I think this is a fight that we're seeing that this could square up to be a pretty good one in the arena of fighting, because Harvard are no slouches. They got the long money to stay in this fight.
I think they got several billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars in their endowment
Yep.
They have lots of rich people who are
Yep.
on their side in this battle. So they can,
And to mention from a legal perspective, they have bred some of the strongest lawyers that some of that our nation has seen. So they have some coins on their side, man. This is definitely a Thanos versus Avengers type of matchup. So good luck, but Trump is not backing down. So if you're in remedial math at Harvard, I want to apologize that you have been targeted by our president.
you got to stray for no reason, man.
You got a straight bullet for no
You just
reason.
here trying to figure out what 2 + 2 is.
Yeah. Prayers to you that you understand what 2 + 2 is, and you be able to make it through. So those are my spotlights for the week. So we have reached the conclusion of our episode, but before we end, I actually forgot to do this, Manny, at the beginning, but I want to take a moment to honor the brave men and women who gave their lives in service to this country.
Absolutely.
As you're listening to this episode, it is Memorial Day, so shout out to those that are observing this holiday. It's not something that we should view just as a long weekend, or even some may view it as some schools are starting to close. I believe this is the final week for some schools around our country. This should not be looked at as a start to the summer, but it should be a reminder of the freedom and the cost of freedom that we are able to have. Though we may have some indifferences in the United States, and we may have some differences politically, I think that one thing we all can agree on is that the men and women who have served bravely to allow us to have the freedom that most in this world do not experience, do not live in, do not have. We should be eternally grateful for that. So, as we observe this day, I just want to remember the sacrifice that you've made, the honor of your legacy, and that we carry it for those of us that have not served, that we carry it with gratitude for those men and women and the families of those men and women that have allowed us to be able to have the freedom that we have here in the United States. So happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day. And thank you to those who've gone on and those Gold Star families that still have to live and process life with those loss of those loved ones. So thank you guys for the sacrifice that you all have made as well to this country for the freedoms we enjoy right here, right now.
Yes, indeed. So that is the conclusion of episode 21 of season 2. Be on the lookout for episode 21 part 2 that will be coming out as we continue to pick up where we left off with our big beautiful bill. But we want to thank you for tuning in to this episode and listening and hopefully enjoying, and continue to spread the word of Pardon the Politics as we try our best here to continue to cover the chaos that we call politics in this world today. So with that being said, all hearts and minds clear, brother. You good?
I got one thing so we said last week that we had a big announcement coming.
Oh,
and we're going to go ahead and make that announcement. So from now, starting when you hear this episode, all the way through summer, we are taking ideas for what to call our user base. You, our listeners. So send us your thoughts, send us your ideas, and the winner will win some first run Pardon the Politics gear that will be coming out over the summer.
Yes.
So we thank you guys for your continued support, talking to other people, talking about the pod. We appreciate it. We feel the love. We want to give back. So you guys, the person we select will get some first run Pardon the Politics gear.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about like your everyday t-shirt. It wouldn't be us if you just got some t-shirts with the logo. Oh no.
Exactly.
We got some stuff cooking. So you will get first completely free.
Yep.
We're going to pay for the shipping to get it to you.
Yep. We just need you to participate.
We just need you to participate and send us your ideas, and we'll take the rest from here.
Hey, Beyonce has the Beehive, Trump has the MAGAs. So the partner politics, we need
We
our
need the
own
people.
we need our own name for our people too. You guys have been supporting us tremendously on this journey, and we would not be able to do what we do without you. So we want to coin something, and we want to give our listeners that opportunity to give us that name for our listeners that tune in so faithfully each and every week. So reach out to us, let us know what that is. And be on the lookout for the merch and some other developments that will be coming soon. So with that being said, I'm good, brother. All hearts
I'm
and
good
minds
as
clear.
well.
All right. Well, as we always say at the end of every episode, that if don't nobody love you, just know that the boys here at Partner Politics, we love
We
you.
love y'all.
So take care. Enjoy this Memorial Day. Thank you. And shout out to all those honorable men and women who have served in their families. And we will see you at the next episode. Take care, world.